Intro to Inkscape Part 2.
Another super important tool is the circle tool. So I'm holding control as I drag around, and you can see it's snapping to different ratios, but you don't have to do that. So holding control is usually the behavior that you'll do, especially if what you want is a circle. That is, it is 1 unit across and 1 unit tall, whereas any other size doesn't have that property and so isn't perfectly round. So you will almost always use the ellipse tool, at least to begin with, holding control, but you don't have to. There's no reason you have to do that. Shift also works here, as it did in the last example. You can use it and it begins drawing from the center of whatever that is. And then just like with the rectangle tool, you can also use shift with control and start from the center and also constrain its ratio relationship. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to give us a square to mess with in a bit as well. And then I will show one other super important tool. This is the Bezier tool. The Bezier tool is how you draw lines. Now, different than these last two, a Bezier line is drawn not by clicking and dragging, but rather by clicking, laying down a point, and then coming somewhere else on the canvas or the page and clicking again to lay down a point. Each time you click, it lays down a point, and that is a new point in the design. And then to finish a design, you can either close it by clicking back on your first point, and that will close the design. You can hit enter, which will make all of those lines into a single path. That is a series of lines with some curve. These all have a curve of 0 right now, but the curve is still a known number, and they're connected by nodes. In this view, we can only see 2 nodes, the 2 cusp nodes, the ends of the lines. But by switching to this tool right here, which is the node tool, also found on your keyboard by hitting the letter N, we can see all of the points that I dropped. Each of these was a click and is somewhere in the path from this node, this cusp node, this end node, to this end node. And it is in some path, and these, with the node editing tool, can be moved around. That, what you just saw, was snapping behavior. I pulled it down here, and when I get close enough, it snaps to these other nodes. That is super helpful for arranging things, getting them to actually touch. There are all kinds of snapping behaviors that you can get. If I want this to snap to the path, because right now it looks like it's on the line, and maybe it is and maybe it's not, but we zoom in, we see that I missed it pretty badly, and so that is not good enough for a lot of the design work that you're going to wind up doing with Inkscape. Instead, what you want to do is come over here to snapping behaviors and turn this one on, snap to path. Now, when I get close, it snaps to it. It'll let me place it out here, but when I get about this close, you see it starts snapping to that path, trying to help me position the things. Interestingly, the node editing tool doesn't work on these shapes right now. These are not shapes, these are not paths like this. They are shapes in the program. They are special types of designs. This one you can see down at the bottom of the page down here says rectangle. This one says circle, whereas this one will say path. So if you want to be able to change the paths like this or like this on something like these, you have to first turn them into paths. The way to do that is using the selector tool. You grab that and then go path, object to path, And you will see that now it is a path, and it tells you how many nodes there are in it, and it is no longer a rectangle. So when you click on it, it says path down there at the bottom of the page. This one says circle down there at the bottom of the page, right down here. And now I select it with the selector tool, go to path, object to path, and now it says that it is a path in 4 nodes. And now, if I hit the letter N, I can move these around in the normal way. What I did here is change the shape of this path just by grabbing it. And the nodes are where that line starts and stops, but the reason this is called a Bezier tool is because of these handles that come out of those nodes. When you change the shape, the handles are created, and they appear and allow you to fine-tune the shape that you are working with. That shape is changed by these handles in 2 ways. There is angle, and also what's called velocity, or the amount of power that the line is coming out of that node. So if it comes out of that node really hard, then you can get a tight corner here and here. It throws it further away from the node, basically. And that is affected by whatever it is connected to, obviously, because it has to work its way back and agree with the conditions set by this handle. So using these, you can get really specific curves and shapes, stuff like that, if you were trying to copy an image or something. These are very useful to know that they're there. You can also do this just by grabbing the line and pulling on it. This usually doesn't allow you to control it as gently or accurately as these do. This is a good way to get close to what you want, and then use this to fine-tune. And this is just something to mess around with. You just start drawing something, start tracing something, and start messing with these to see what different behaviors you can get out of them. The text tool you'll wind up likely wanting to use for putting names or words on things. So you just drop the text box wherever you want, begin typing in it, and then up here in the context menu, you have lots of the normal options, but you also have more delicate options. You can change the spacing of words as well, and then you have even more delicate options, which again, I would encourage you to play around with. There are all sorts of things that you can do to paths. Changing the fill is one of the most important, and changing the stroke is also fundamental to knowing about the path. So changing the fill, you just click on any color that is down here in the color bar, and the fill, that is the color that the internal of it is colored, will change. You can also change the color of the stroke around it by holding Shift and clicking any color down here, and that will put an outline around the object and then make it whatever color you've chosen. You can get rid of the outline by clicking on this, None. While holding Shift, you click that, and it gets rid of it entirely, and then you can continue modifying the fill if you want, or go back to modifying the outline. A little difficult to see there, but there is an outline that is a different color. Another way of looking at these things and more carefully changing their properties is by opening the fill and stroke menu, which is Control-Shift-F. Control-Shift-F will allow you to change the fill in lots of different ways. The solid fill is usually what you'll use, but there are other options, each of themselves with a world of opportunities inside of them. And then the stroke paint is, the stroke is what that outline shape is called. And stroke style is also something that you will need to notice and adjust, because it allows you to increase and decrease the thickness, change what the stroke actually looks like, which markers are used on the stroke and where they are, all sorts of interesting things that are beyond the scope of this video, but are essential to having a grasp of, to fully understand what's going on in the things that you design. Right now I'm using Control Z to just back up in the time flow so that we get something. All right, and then we see with the node editing tool, this is not a circle. It is, in fact, just a path that happens to look like a perfect circle. And because it was a perfect circle when we made it, we haven't changed anything, we know it still is. But now I'm going to want to attach this circle to this square. Right now, you can see that the circle is behind the square. You see that because when you move the square over the square hides the circle, not the other way around. This is because I drew the square after I drew the circle, and so there is a stack order in the program. Every time you draw a new thing, it is drawn on top of all other things. It is higher in the stack. Even if they're not layered over one another, the computer remembers the order that they were drawn in. The way you change this is with page up and page down. So if I want to bring the circle above the square, I hit page up, and now it is on top of the square. If there were lots of things, I might have to hit page up several times. You can also snap anything to the very front or very back of the canvas using home, which is the very front, or end, which is the very back. So we're now going to use some of the path functions just to see what they do. When you're using a path function, you have to select two paths. They have to be paths, they cannot be objects. So you have to have gone through the path object to path procedure on something. It won't work if you just draw out something like that and then try to do a path function on it, because right now it is not a path, it is a rectangle. This is a path, this is a path, this is a path, this is a rectangle, as can be seen down here. So this is a file that I'm looking at, which you can access through the help menu, help, tutorials, and then this is the advanced one. There's lots of information in this, but it does have the path operations that we've been talking about. I would highly encourage you to spend some time going through these. Each one of them takes 5 or 6 minutes to read, and you wind up learning a ton about what kinds of things can be done and what it might mean for your projects.
Thanks for watching part 2 of our Intro to Inkscape series. Click the card or the link in the description for more videos in the Youth Maker Market program. See you soon.